What is up? I'm Miguel Antonio, and you are listening to the Live and Create podcast. It's where I interview artists and entrepreneurs about what it means to live a great life and create great things. And before we jump into the podcast, I'd love for you to check out my band, Run With It. Here's a clip from our song, Night Watch.
Late nights, losing time, the cars, the trains, the flashing lights, fade right in the line. When they let me in, I dance all night. Just one taste, gonna kill the pain. Hey, 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 just one taste. Just one taste, all it's gonna take. Hey, 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 just one taste. I'm on the night watch, baby, run till the sun. I'm on the night watch, baby, run until the sun comes up.
Like what you heard, make sure you check us out at Run With It Band, at Run With It Band, everywhere you follow people at, or go to runwithitband.net. It'll take you to all the different links you want to go to, and there'll be a little button you can click for booking information. Now for today's podcast.
The Live and Create podcast.
So these seasons you're hustling. I saw the Etsy store and I'm like, oh, wow. Like full on entrepreneur, full on artist and community builder. But another thing I noticed too, though, is there's this just slight connection with the Kansas City piece, the Danielle Nicole band, with you, I think, opening for them.
Yes.
And used to be Trampled Underfoot. And so she's a fairly big deal for us in Kansas City as musicians and everything. And how long ago was that you did that show?
That was some years ago. That was before COVID. In one of my incarnations and things I do, I play bass for Ashley Chevalier, who you've had on your podcast. Yeah. So, lovely lady. And we got to open for Danielle at the Pearl Street Warehouse. So that is the connection, and just made an impression the whole show. And I write a article for No Trouble, cover story once a month, called Wonder Women: Stories from the Women Who Play Bass, which is really just to chronicle and archive the stories of our female players. And I just, I can't come back to it. One of those like late night, like, oh, this story is due like 3 days. Yeah. Corey might want something before midnight. Okay, cool. And I just like started researching more and just was very, very intrigued more. I found out about her. So yeah, she is, I'm a bit of a fangirl too. So in my own way. So yeah.
Well, I feel like true bass players are hard to find in general as well. Cause a lot of times you meet, at least in the rock world, I meet a lot of bass players who are kind of like, oh, I played guitar, but someone said you have to play bass in the band kind of deal. But like to find people who are passionate about bass and what it offers an actual like piece of music is rare. And then I imagine finding female basses even more rare on that. Am I wrong in this?
I mean, I see what you're saying for all of that. I'm not saying you're wrong.
Okay.
Because opinions
wrong, though.
Yeah, no, opinions. No. I mean,
it might be the world I'm running in versus where you're at. So
perfect. I was gonna say our opinions are often formed by our experiences. So that's why we have them. There are more female bass players now than when I was younger, which is a delightful thing to see. I think the first year I attended Gerald Beasley's bass boot camp, there was maybe like 7 or 9 bass players in the camp picture that were women.
Out of how many?
I think that camp was like 120 people.
Oh gosh, yeah.
So yeah.
Small percent.
Right. And it's been nice to see in the camp pictures that number has grown over time, and even like just the presence when I go to different things, there are more female bass players out there. There are people who have been guitarists, me included, who picked up bass, but not because, we need a bass player for the man kind of a thing. Everyone's got a reason. But I mean, a lot of people are just multi-instrumentalists. So you'll hear that backstory frequently, and it's not wrong to have come to that. And, Tootie Cole, who I did a profile on, her husband was teaching himself guitar, and he just needed a bass player, so she got corralled into
So it's the same story.
yeah, right,
And
exactly.
then you fall in love with it.
Right. So, you know, I think in my case, I got to college and they didn't have a guitar program. I had originally started journalism and audio recording. That was my first initial choices. And they're like, oh, you got to play an instrument in the audio recording program. I'm like, oh, well. And they're like, well, you played guitar. How about bass? And the dang teachers even did it, you know? So
it does seem like I've met a lot of bass players who that's where it started.
Right. So, no, but they didn't have an electric bass. They were like, well, not like the classical double bass.
Right.
And it just clicked. It just clicked. So, and
That's
then from
awesome.
there, I got on electric bass, and it really clicked. And there you have it.
That's
Somehow I did not graduate it.
What was it about? Oh, you didn't. So you said you didn't finish.
I didn't finish journalism. I switched to music major.
That's awesome. You're like, nah, I'm out, guys.
I was out.
So I'm curious though. So in that transformation, because I've seen that, you know, I see even my own bass player, like the way he is just dove in and fallen in love with like what it brings, what it offers. What was it for you that click, that made that click?
That's a good question because it evolves over time. I think the initial click was because I was being taught as a classical player initially, was put bow to string, and the sound I got, like the way the instrument resonated and the way it worked in an orchestral environment. Because at the same time, I was like also in, you know, composition classes and theory classes. So it was kind of seeing how it all worked together, like learning it that way. It was knitting itself together. And just like what this instrument was capable of. I was still playing guitar back then. I was like going around to coffee houses and singing and playing guitar. And, you know, I was recording stuff like back then, like a little 4-track and all that, and like making a demo. And, you know, so I had to play everything and sing everything. And
that's
then,
hardcore, by the way, because I only know the digital world. Like I didn't start doing production until I had Logic and unlimited channels and plugins.
Yeah, I was Gen X, so
that's you guys did it for real. I look at that, I'm like, I don't know how they I can't even process that. But sorry, I
it's
cut
okay.
you off though. So you're learning
good,
theory, you're feeling the resonance, and I smile just because I remember those days in college as well, like hearing the notes slam against each other, and just there's something, I get goosebumps thinking about it right now. There's something about it. It's hard to explain if you haven't walked that road.
You're learning it's that moment where you were immersed and you were learning the secrets of the universe in a way. To me, you know, why did the planets make the sounds they make, and, you know, all that good stuff. And I had this like definite garage band background. So, because I was high school, so I was the kid who would go up and down the practice room hallway and knock on people's door when I saw someone. And you're like, what are you playing? What are you playing? You know, and they're like, they play it. I'm like, okay, can I improvise? And I come in and like, just like by ear, we pick it apart. And then I have to go down to my thing and woodshed on like, you know, my orchestral music and my solo stuff for my recitals and stuff. And then vanish down the hall and play some guitar and record the bass parts for it. That immersiveness. Yeah. So that was that time. Yeah. Sorry.
So it sounds like
memory.
It's all good. Like I said, even with you describing that experience, it kind of took me back all of a sudden to those moments in a practice room where I remember just, so my emphasis was voice, and through that learning piano. And I just remember just hitting those chords and doing these dissonance sounds, and I could just listen to it for hours. I could listen to the waves, the sound waves, where it's like almost to the point where you can start to see it. And so it's fun kind of thinking back on that. Now, so for you, it almost sounds like just the whole experience, like it's like this holistic experience that made it click for you in a way. Like even, would you say secrets of the universe? Like, I like that phrase.
It was almost really like unpacking the secrets of the universe to why these things work together. And then I kind of got out and got an electric bass, and that was a whole other like, oh, okay, there's a
Like
whole
Bob
other,
Dylan goes electric, like it just changed the world.
yeah, there was a whole other world to unpack there, whew.
Now, living in the classical world on the double bass and then switching to electric bass, what was that like? Was that a hard transition for you, or did the garage band background kind of help you get to the electric bass quicker?
It wasn't, because at the time I got out, there were more electric bass gigs than double bass, so nobody really complained too hard if I brought the double bass with me. But so some of it was like, oh, must pay bills. I'm gonna learn this thing. um, I think one of the first difficult transitions was I got a fretted 4, and that was fine. I think about a year or two later, I pulled the frets on it. I had not heard of Jocko yet. I just talked to a luthier. I'm like, how do I defret this thing? Because it's making me a little nuts. That's
amazing. You pulled the frets off. When I look at people playing anything fretless, I'm like, I don't even know how that works. How do you do that? I don't know.
So I talked to a luthier friend of mine. He taught me how to make the tools, and I pulled the frets and I dapped it and did the whole like soldering gun on the frets to melt the glue and popped them out, and then dapped it and sanded it and put it back into service. Yeah, that was good too. And then I just kind of ended up magically, just because I was interested in buying a 6-string bass, not knowing like, oh, there was real shade about the instrument, but I kind of got into what it was capable of. And then I started seeing people like Michael Manring, and I went into this Jocko rabbit hole like everybody does, and finding all these other players, and again, it was like a whole other like learning the secrets of the universe phase. It's still kind of ongoing. It's still ongoing, but
I'm part of a like sync licensing community, like online thing. That's where our band is headed.
Nice.
2025.
Yeah. So many
and
people.
I was explaining to them, like the guy who leads the group, he's like, how are you feeling with it? Cause I had all these questions, I'm just like, I was like, dude, I feel like I just got into a house with like 100 rooms, and I went into one room and I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then I go out and I'm like, shit, there's like 100 more, like, because it's this constant like re-exploring and understanding. And yeah, it's exciting to think about being part of things though, that kind of have an endless journey in a way.
Yeah.
Like music, you can go the music business. I love the business side and I love the music side, and both of them, you can just go down those rabbit holes and then come back up. You're like, there's more rabbit holes. It's wild.
It evolves and it grows. I mean, you're right. We've barely talked about the whole business end of it, but you're right. That evolves and grows. And you just mentioned sync licensing. I think everybody is kind of like peeking their head in that room, just going, oh, wait, what? Whoa. And
you got paid what for doing your original stuff? What?
And there's so much there too. Yeah. No, I totally feel you on that.
What's the rabbit hole that you feel like you're in right now?
Okay. Probably a little bit of what you're just talking about in sync, and then also
cool.
Working on tracks for that purpose. Getting my production skills better, my mixing skills better. I've been building a home studio. That.
That's awesome.
So
that's literally like, yeah, I'm all day production, all day trying to understand the sync business. Like, we were getting, like right now we're setting up all our contracts for the PRO, all their numbers, like make sure all of our business shit is together. Things that we probably should have done years ago as a band, but we just, didn't know it was important. And, but yeah, then the mixing, that's one of the new rooms I've been in as well. I thought I would hate it, but I'm falling in love with the mixing process. I don't know what your experience has been with it thus far, but
super nerdy.
It is. You're like, if we bring it down at 200, this gets really muddy around 500. You get super nerdy on it.
Yeah, you're like,
but it's fun.
Yeah, you know, like that you get, it's very detail oriented. You're cleaning stuff up sometimes if you have live stuff in there. If you're doing samples, you know, maybe not so much, or, you know, or
Yeah.
like, oh, here's this MIDI thing. What can we pair with that? What virtual instruments can I use with that? And, you know, lately kind of re-listening to stuff that I was like, I let this sit for a bit. I've been working with it a little while. And then go back and I'm like, and you realize you've learned more. So you're like, oh God, why did I release that with those drums? You know,
Yeah, I'm uploading. I'm uploading all of our music on. There's a platform. Are you familiar with Disco?
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're getting all of our shit up on there, and I'm listening to it now. I'm like, I gotta remix that. I gotta redo. I gotta, because I'm like, oh, and even some of that stuff was like done by someone else, but even down to like. Now I'm like, ooh, I would have rather, not that it was bad even, it was just like, ooh, I would rather have this, or
You just learn more. Yeah. You've grown from where you were at when you first did that. This is what I'm hearing. And yeah, same thing. Like the same, like, oh, I'm going to put this on disco. No, I'm not till I do something with those drums. No. This could be better than they are now.
I love talking to somebody else who's living that same life. Yeah. I'm listening. Well, it's so funny because my experience was we worked with a producer, and even that producer, we're still good friends. So I'm kind of using him in a sense as a coach as much as he's willing to coach us. And he's been very helpful as we're learning to produce ourselves.
Nice.
And I know without the 10 years of working with him, there's no way I could even feel confident trying to do this now on my own. But I got sidetracked. I was trying to give him props, and then where was I going with that?
Growth, drums, the drums. We've grown. We hear something different. We're going to go back and remix it. Disco.
Oh, that's what it was. Thank you. You got me there. He would always send us. That was brilliant. He would send me mixes, and I would listen to it, and I'd go, "Sounds good." Because I had, even like in the beginning, I had no idea what am I supposed to be listening for in a mix? I was like, I don't know, voice is too loud or too low, you know, like very simple things where now even just understanding like how the compression's hitting, how the reverb's hitting, like where you want like side chaining happen, like all this whole world where I'm like, I could have been listening for all of that, but I had no idea.
Yeah, yours just learn more. Yeah. No, I had some stuff that came in at one point, and like a student sent it, or no, a friend sent it, and they were like, hey, this studio did this work with this thing, and I'm like sitting there listening to it, and I'm like that was a studio? You know, like literally even played it for a couple of my students who are in production, and they're like, that's a studio? You know. Not throwing shade again, but just, you know, like, okay.
There's levels to this game, and not everybody is on the same level. And I gotta be honest, my level of production still is way low. I got a lot.
Yeah, we're all learning. Growth. We're all learning for sure. Yeah,
it makes it fun.
Yeah.
So for you, obviously, I feel like we could probably. It sounds like you and I could geek out about this forever. But one thing that's really impressive, like learning more about what you're up to, is this idea of community building, where it's not just about. It's not just about the music and like hiding in a studio or a practice room, or, you know, playing on stage and then walking off to the green room. Like you seem to be heavily invested in investing in other people. Where does that passion come from to educate and to build that community?
Well, there's a couple things. Part of it is being a teacher. A friend of mine actually helped me with this concept of it. She articulated it better than anybody. She's like, you're an artist who chooses to teach. I was like, dang. I think a lot of people just peg it as being a teacher. Victor Wooten has this really great quote about, if people put you on a pedestal, let them. Don't try to play the humble game and like, oh, no. Like he's like, but then you use that pedestal to pull them up there with you. We all get better together when we approach it like that.
Man, that's
know, yeah. But that being said, that's a rough place to live. You mentioned the Pareto law. I went back and listened to some of your stuff, and that really helped. Awesome. Yeah, no, but I was like, that really helped me with something. I bring this up because community building does work, but remember that there's like an 80-20 law. You're going to put a lot of time and effort into a lot of people, and probably like 20% of them are going to do 80% of the work. And
Yeah.
so like, if you are stepping up and putting the energy in, it's really easy to get burnt out. It's really easy to just get jaded. It's really easy to get tired because you're pouring so much of your knowledge. You know, I've had students who've a long time, you know, done stuff, and I see they didn't do a very fundamental, important lesson. I used to be very like you would have known that if you did that. You know,
Like, hey, bro.
yeah, like, what? Get your shit together. You wasted my time and your money. Don't do that. And yeah, it's a little easier when you let go with that law, and you're like, you know what? Only 20% of them are going to do the most work, and that's
And
fine.
just, it sounds like almost make peace with it in a way.
Bingo. But that doesn't mean that the other ones didn't change for the better in some way. You just may not see that same yield. They may only have, you know, it may only affect them in a 10% way. You know,
Yeah.
I've had people come in for guitar lessons who it was a very part-time thing. They work in the government, their branch is doing something, and I'm talking to another student about branding and business and stuff. And all of a sudden, like, I've got this guy in my face, like, I need to hear about that because my branch needs to hear this. So he got his 10% and did help somebody, you know.
Well, and it's interesting because I went the jaded burnout route. I taught privately for 6 years. That was pretty much all I did. And but I got to the point where I would literally, like, when students, there was one student in particular. In fact, when one of our boys were born, my wife suggested a name that was the name of this student, and she didn't know that. And I just looked at her. I was like, no. And this was like years after teaching. I was like, nope, I can't do it because of that kid. And I just got to the point where he would come into the studio and I'd be like, he didn't do his work again. And I'd be like, hey, you practice this. I'm going to step out. And I would step out of the studio. This is my last like 6 months of teaching. It was time for me to quit. I was not at a good place.
Not in a good spot.
I would come back about 20 minutes later and walk back in the studio. I'm like, okay, we're done. So I actually had a meeting with his mom. I was like, I would encourage you to stop paying me for lessons. Like but it is, I think I got hung up on that piece too, though. Cause I love the students who were like, teach me theory, teach me this. Yeah. And like, they're like, some of those students are now off doing their professional musicians, and that's exciting. But like you said, then there's a whole other chunk where I don't think I was mature enough to understand like what you described. Like maybe this is just part of character development for this kid. Maybe that kid needed to learn like hard lessons, like, hey, we're going to keep doing the same lesson until you do it, you know? But I just wasn't there mentally.
Hey, well, hopefully I handed a piece of that back to you that you handed to me. So
yeah, hey, that's definitely helpful. That with you in teaching, are you doing group or one-on-one? What's that look like?
I have done group. I usually do one-on-one these days. It's virtual or in person or hybrid if you're local. And I also teach down the road at the University of Mary Washington. So
nice.
Yeah.
Now that's privately as well?
That is private as well. Yeah. So it's private based lessons, which is interesting. Just, you know, I'm back where it all started.
But now they're paying me to be here.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
Me paying them.
Yes. So.
Well, and you seem to have this business thread, you know, running underneath this artistic thread that you got going. With the Etsy store, it sounded like it, in a sense, it wasn't even what you planned. In a sense, it kind of grew for you unexpectedly. Am I right?
You are correct, sir. When I'm not being paid to do bass for somebody else, you know, which is a whole other gig. Like I do a lot of different things, music theater, support for pit stuff. I go out with Ashley. There's a lot of other things I do. When I'm left to my own devices, I get in the car and I go play solo bass where they'll have me, you know, and it's more like just being a singer-songwriter who also plays bass. So, so I'm Michael Manring and kind of knitted that together with everything else. It was like, okay, now I got it. So, you know, I jump in the car doing cross-country runs, and I was like, I need some merch to sell. Put some gas in this thing. So the quickest way to do that was to like just sit down and use my craft skills. And it kind of became a thing.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
you were just selling it at your live events at first.
Initially, yeah, and on
Okay.
Facebook, believe it or not, on social media, I'm getting people like, "Are you coming to NAM?" They're like, "You bringing any necklaces with you?" I was like, "Seriously? Okay." I'd pull
You're
over and
like,
like
I am now.
taking pictures. People were picking out stuff before I even got to the show. Um,
Dang.
and yeah, I did set up a structured shop on Etsy to stock now and keep it going. So, and this is kind of Etsy's high holy season right now. So.
Everybody's doing it.
Yeah, I was sitting during a lesson last night and I'm just like talking to my student. And this is the best part, right? Just like your music can sell online, when you're not actively gigging. I'm sitting there during a lesson. All of a sudden my eyes got big. They're like, "What's wrong?" I'm like, I just had a $120 sale through the store.
Boom.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I
So
love that. I love to hear that too, because I think when you look at merchandise, we talked about the sync licensing piece. The one thing I like about those aspects is it's something that works even when we're not. And I think in this industry, we can burn ourselves out. Like, cause most of
yeah,
my money comes from live performance still, and sometimes, like 5 nights in a row singing or 4 hour shows or whatever, my voice is just toast or my body's falling apart. And I've seen it time and time again for other artists. And so
yeah,
for artists to be able to build things that are out there making, like, bringing in income and essentially helping build wealth long term beyond what you can do physically, that's an exciting thing. And
it is.
yeah, absolutely.
I didn't mean to cut
Yeah,
you
that
off.
no, that's fine. I think that's, yeah, for me personally, that's what I've been thinking. I don't know, just because I'm getting older or whatever, and as much as I do love performing live, like, it's just sometimes, like I said, where I got to a point where my voice, I was like, I don't know how much more my voice can take right now, and I got all the, I have my degree in singing, like I know the techniques, I know all the things, but at some point, our bodies start to say, hey, like,
Yeah, I came to it differently than that, but the same thought kind of pervades my motivations as well. I I had an injury. It's pretty well documented through a couple different interviews now where I broke my left wrist, and I don't have the mobility that I did before. I can
that's
play
scary.
bass. Yeah, it's called chronic regional pain syndrome. I've gained good functionality that I'm even going back and playing solo stuff now, which is probably the most
Nice.
demanding stuff, and rebuilding some of the solo upright stuff. Um, but during that time, there was a period of paralysis, like
Hmm.
straight up, like fingers didn't move. Like to pick up my keys was a big deal with two fingers. That was like an accomplishment in physical therapy.
Wow.
I have some good friends in a band called Incendio, Lisa Carvey and JP Duran. And they kind of were really concerned big time that like, how are you going to make money? Because I was still teaching. Everyone was very
Right.
gracious. I was very, very good at verbalizing instead of jamming along with everybody and physically showing them things. And they were like, you might want to consider getting into sync licensing. And they had been writing for like the Paramount Library and Star
Nice.
Trek and right, yeah. So they kind of turned me onto it when I'm sitting there with a hand that can barely do stuff, but I'm like, okay, I can I can play a keyboard with this hand still,
Yeah.
you know.
You can right hand the bass on the keyboard for a while.
Yeah, so that's kind of where it kind of entered my ecosystem, and probably in a good way.
Yeah.
It was a nice. I don't want to say like this was a great thing to have happened, but it opened some opportunities and some doors up to me through friends who were kind enough to share of their information. So
That's huge. With my boys a lot in life, we talk about when hard shit happens. It's
mm,
like,
yeah,
it's not necessarily like look at the sunny side, like bullshit, but it's more like look for the opportunity. And I think that's what you said. It's like, where is the opportunity in this? Because the reality is, I can only imagine. Like, there was a time where I lost a few notes in my voice.
ooh,
It was right after we had toured for like 2 years, um,
damn,
and that was scary. so I can imagine as a bass player, like it becomes such a part of our identity, but still, so that's hard. And, but it's more like, where is that opportunity? That's amazing that now that's coming back, but you also have learned this other world. Where are you at in the sync journey? What's that look like for you?
I'm still writing stuff, still tweaking, still learning my mixing, getting ready to set up my disco page and start throwing some stuff up there. So, nice. And the other part, you touched on is important is that realization that we're not, we're ephemeral. This is not forever. And we bodies break down, we break down. So diversifying your streams of income, like an investment portfolio, having teaching an Etsy store, sync, Spotify, if that's your jam. I'm not throwing shade, just I know everyone's got an opinion. However, having a small music store, that's kind of how you manage to do this thing anyway, if you're going to be an artist entrepreneur. So,
yeah. That's last night. One of my boys' soccer games. I met one of the other dads I had a chance to meet all year thus far, and we just got talking. Found out he was in a band, and they went touring right out of college. He's like, "Dude, we started talking about music, and he's like, yeah, we did it. We did like 60, 70 shows. Came back, and we were like, shit, this is hard, And he even say he went a different direction in life because he was like, this is basically he was kind of saying is like you gotta really, really be about it. It's like a full lifestyle. And it really is. It's like, if you go this path, you have to apply creativity to every little aspect. And it's not, and I even told him, I was like, yeah, I quit twice in this journey thus far. I decided that was the main mistake I made along the way. There are a lot of them, but the main one was just quitting. Cause it's like, you got to figure out how to pivot in each section. But it was when he said that, I was like, oh yeah, it's not an easy life, and you have to be willing to, bob and weave. When thinking of other artists, like say there's another artist who wants to get into bass playing, what would be your advice to them if they're just getting started right now?
I'm going to feed into something you just said. There will come a time when you will want to quit.
And don't do it. Like, don't be Miguel.
You know what? I'm gonna add something to that really quick, because I think there's something really important there. But I will answer your question, and that is, that's not a bad thing. Yeah, that's not a bad thing. I know you're saying like don't do it, and you're totally right with that opinion. But the question is, when you come back, you have to choose it, and that's important. And you actually are clear why you're choosing to come back to it. When this got broken, I know that. Like for me, there were a few moments where it was like all the physical therapy and everything I was going to have to do, like you are choosing to come back. And so some part of me was also like, let's just see what comes back. But when you're stepping into, you're choosing it, you could bail. Yeah. You could just tell people like, it's fucked up, I can't play anymore, and I'm like, no, I'm going to choose it. So I think there's an important lesson there, even in that,
No, and I think that's a great point. Because I do look back, I try not to sit in regret. I try to sit more in like learning, from the past in that regard. But I know my drummer was the only one who came back from the original lineup, and then we had to rebuild the band. And we were talking one night that the journey both him and I went on individually, like we had to grow like mentally, internally, like in so many different ways that we kind of speculated, like, was this the better route anyway? Because like the things we had to learn to get to where we are. And like you said, now I'm like, I've hit some hard stuff again, and I'm just like, well, I'm not quitting. So we're going to fucking figure it out, and it's like, and, cause like I think choosing it was a greater resolve there. So that's a great reminder. I love that. But yeah.
So you'll hit that point, and you're going to have to, you're going to want to quit, and you might quit. And if you come back, and you will probably come back, it will probably call you back. You're probably going to get a knock on the head. It's going to be like, hey, excuse me, we want our property back. And you're going to have to choose your reason. But aside from that, your person rolling in the door, my first question always is, why do you want to play bass? Or why do you want to play guitar? Why do you want to play, and I wait to see what they say. And that there holds a lot about who they are. The general stuff I can tell you is learn the neck. I'm really, really, really big on learning the neck, knowing the notes on the neck, and be consistent. Be consistent. You can't be healthy if you work on your health part-time. You can't be a good bass player if you pick it up every other day or on the weekends only. You just can't. So you'll be a bass player. You might be a bass player to a level that, you're happy jamming at open mic with your friends. But, if you really are in it to do it, be consistent.
That's awesome. Yeah, because the pros, you know it. Anyone who's doing it for real, they're in it, man. That's why, I play guitar, but I try not to really say I'm a guitarist per se, like in the band. I perform a lot solo acoustic, but it's just, and people are like, you're really good at guitar. I have people who will tell me that, but I'm like, I know people who are really good at guitar. I'm not really good at guitar.
I understand.
So I'll focus on singing and songwriting. That's my bigger focus. But for the last two questions of the podcast, right now in your life, how would you define living a great life?
Living a great life. Creativity, growth, definitely growth, like having that opportunity to grow, like developing yourself, growing yourself, spaciousness to grow, the time to grow, self-awareness, self-reflection, connection with others, balance, ideally peace of mind.
Somewhere in all that, right?
Somewhere in all that, I think is yeah.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you've been on that journey. Trying to weave in all that. For the last question, how would you define creating great things?
I think, obviously you asked that of a lot of people, so everyone's answer is going to be different. That is up to them to define. Creating great things. Ideally, it doesn't matter if they touch people. I think the authentic, there it is, authentic expression. Not everybody is going to be awesome at certain levels where you're going to get all the attention and the eyes are on you and all that. But everyone has the ability to be authentically expressive and passionate. I think that if you can't play bass like certain ex-bass player, maybe you're not Primus, maybe you're not Vic, maybe you're not Stanley Clark. I'm knocking on wood right now. Anyway, so you can, though, have an authentic expression of your art, and you can strive to keep that growing and make it better. And hopefully, that allows you to create legacy.
That's awesome. Well, let folks know how to connect with you, how to keep up with what you're doing.
LadyBassMusic.net is my website, and you can get on all my socials from there. I probably update my socials more than my website. I try to do what I can. So if you want a more timely update, go there. If you are interested in lessons, virtually online, if you're local to me, DC, Richmond area, I'm kind of between those two, lady.bass.music@gmail.com. Shoot me an email and let's talk about it. There you go.
Thank you for listening to the Live and Create podcast. If you like what you heard, make sure you subscribe and leave a comment or a review.
The Live and Create podcast.